everybody. Welcome back to Making Records with Eric Valentine. That's me. This is an exciting episode. I feel like these production deconstructions are really sort of the kind of heart of this whole YouTube channel thing that I got going. They're really sort of the foundation of it. And so this is a really cool one. I know some people have been asking for this, and it's happening. We are going to dig deep into the song Make Damn Sure. And I got a little extra special treat in there as well. So we'll get into that in a second. I just had a couple things I wanted to mention. So first, we did the little experimentation last week with monetization. Came up with a new theme song. Thanks for the kind words about that. And the monetization thing kind of sucks. I don't really have control over what ads are played. Like, it's just totally automated in every way. And so far, I don't even know what kind of money comes in from that or not or whatever. I just haven't even gotten that far. I already know that I don't really like it. So I'm not going to do that. This just doesn't make sense for me. So we're going to try something else, and we'll see how this goes. We'll try this like tip jar style. And so I got things set up where I'm going to put some QR codes up on the screen, and any of you that are PayPal or Venmo users, you may have done this before. So here, I'll put those up on the screen. It should be right up around there somewhere. And so basically what happens is, if you have PayPal or Venmo on your phone, you open the app, and there's a mode in there where you can go scan code. So you go to that mode, you'll see the camera turn on, and you just point the camera at the code. It'll read the code, and it'll take you directly to my PayPal and Venmo accounts. And you can give me a tip or a thank you or whatever. And the way I'm thinking about this is, I think I don't want to do this as like a mandatory subscription kind of thing. Like to have access to this, you would have to pay a subscription. Thus far it's just been totally free. I'm having fun doing it. I'm throwing it up there, and that's great. So I want to sort of try and keep the spirit of that going for myself and for everybody for a couple of reasons. I think even though I'm enjoying doing this, it's been really fun, and from how I feel about it now, I'm guessing that I will probably be doing this for as long as I'm relevant or coherent enough to do it. So I'll probably be doing this for the rest of my, coherent life. And, but what I don't want to do is, if I have a subscription-based thing and there's people that are paying money every month or whatever, and I feel this burden that I have to generate content for the people that are paying for it, and I don't want to let them down, it'll just become kind of a drag, and I don't want it to become that. I really want to do it when I feel inspired and excited about doing it. I have a topic that I think will be useful and interesting for everybody, and then I think the content will continue to be hopefully at least as useful or interesting as it's been, and not become sort of this burdensome thing that I have to deal with. So I really want to keep it in this more fun, spontaneous part of my life. I'm very fortunate, I pretty much at this point in my life don't really have to do anything. So I could go and stick my head in the toilet and blow bubbles all day, and I would still be just fine. So I'm very lucky in that way. I haven't made that choice yet, but I don't know, maybe it's time. So I want to keep that aspect of this going. And the other thing, just a quick commentary on my own little feelings about the lovely world of capitalism. I don't have any big issues with capitalism. It certainly served me well. I enjoy having grown up in the United States and having, starting my career here and all that stuff. But there are things about it that aren't perfect. And, one of the things that has always been weird to me is that it seems like it's more kind of like hyper-capitalism. And I don't even know how that's avoidable. But, when I was starting out and trying to get things going. There were times that were extremely desperate, where I had no money or was horribly in debt and was literally living off of microwave burritos that I'd buy at the Chevron station around the corner from Hunk of Shit Studios. And at that time, I mean, that was the time when I actually could have used some help, and I didn't, nobody knew who I was or what I was doing or anything. And this weird thing happens when, I was fortunate enough to meet up with some really talented bands and made some records that became more visible and successful, and then more people were aware of me as a record maker, and all of a sudden people start wanting to give you things. I'm like, where were you when I had nothing? Nobody needs to give me anything now, and so, and I'm still in that situation. So this whole tip jar thing is really more about the other side of it, that I just, the way I move through life is I like to just do what's fair. And that's how I handle all of my interactions with everybody that I deal with. And so I'm just going to offer the opportunity for people to electively do whatever they want with this. So if you're really in a position where either you don't think it's worth it and you don't want to pay anything, then don't pay anything. If you think it's worth something, but you're really not in a position to afford anything, I totally understand that. And I still want it to be available for those people. And so I don't want this to be totally something that's only available for people that can afford it, because then it does this sort of thing where only the people with money get sort of access to things, whatever this YouTube channel is worth. I mean, this is sort of a silly conversation to have in regards to a tiny little YouTube channel that I don't think really matters at all in one way or the other. But it matters to me. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So, if you really can't afford it, then I understand that. And I wouldn't want to, limit anybody's access to it for that reason. If you do find it useful and you can't afford it, then, I certainly appreciate a tip or a thank you, just to express whatever this is worth to you. And it can be, whatever you think. That may be different for different people. It does take some time and effort to do it. I enjoy doing it, so it's not really like it's work or whatever. But if it's really worth something to you, then maybe what's fair is to send me a little thank you for it. And so I think, I've got maybe 40 or so episodes up there, just under 40 episodes. Some of them are just announcements, but, just under 40 of these things that may have useful information in them. And so if you want to give me a thank you for those, that would be awesome. And then from here forward, because even though right now I feel like I'm loving doing this and I'll do it, forever or whatever, as long as I can, or, however that all works out, that's great. But you never know. I may wake up tomorrow and go, I'm totally tired of this and I don't ever want to do it again. So you should send your thanks, based on that reality, that I could stop at any time. I have no plans to, and I'd love to continue doing it. But if I do, I don't want anybody to be disappointed. So I would suggest sending a thank you after you see an episode and you feel like, man, this is useful for me. This is going to make a difference in, the work that I do. And so I just want to show a little appreciation for that. That's great. And so it's really not a subscription for things that might happen in the future, because I really don't know what's going to happen in the future. Want to continue doing this forever, but I may not. I don't know. So there you go. There's my little concept about the tip jars and thank yous. We'll try and do it that way, and then I'll just leave monetization off and not have any stupid ads in there. Whenever there is content in these videos that is music that's owned by somebody else, the automatic system will kick in as soon as there's been 10,000 views. So when there's 10,000 views, then there will be an ad at the beginning of it. From what I can tell, it's only an ad at the beginning, whereas I think when I turn on monetization for me, then there's ads, throughout the thing. It was just too much. So that I have no control over if I'm using licensed material in it, which will be happening on this episode, because we're going to be, digging into the master for Make Damn Sure. So there you go. That's the plan. You guys can do with it whatever you want. Okay, so then I also want to say thank you for all the amazing comments on the last one about doing the sort of quickie temporary speaker tuning thing. People had suggested this before when I did a previous round of setting up speakers and tuning speakers and stuff in the Topanga studio, and suggesting SonarWorks and Room EQ Wizard. So I did download those things and I started using them. They're both incredible. I've switched over to EQing the speakers with SonarWorks with my setup here. I'll probably do a follow-up episode with that. It was really, really cool, and so I'll thank you for that. I'm really enjoying it, and I think it is a better way to go than what I was doing, and so I'll show the results of that and share that with everybody. But that was awesome. So now here's the cool thing that we got going. So getting ready for this episode, I reconnected with a couple of the still current Taking Back Sunday band members, and we had an opportunity to have a video chat and just reminisce about working on this album, the Louder Now album, and the song Make Damn Sure. And so I think the cool thing to do is we'll start with that, and then we'll get into the production deconstruction after that. So for any of you that are here just for the Geeky Studio stuff, you can skip the chat with Adam and Mark. It's about 30 minutes of us geeking out about working together on a record. So you can just skip ahead to where I start digging through the Pro Tools session. But here you go. This is Adam and Mark from Taking Back Sunday. We're talking about the album Louder Now and the song Make Damn Sure. Check it out. Let's just start, and I'm sure it will segue into all kinds of stuff about working together. But and so I always like to start with, and each of you may have an individual version of this, but if there's one particular standout memory from that whole round of making that record Louder Now, what is like the standout memory? And do you want to start on this one, Adam? Do you got something ready to go?
Sure. Well, for me, like with making Louder Now, that whole time in our lives was just insane. Like there were all these kind of things that, like when we started the band or like when we started touring, there were all these things that were just seemed impossible. But we were getting to do them, like we lived in Los Angeles for like 6 months at that time when we were going to barefoot every day. And there was just something like, I just think in general, just kind of this feeling of like, holy shit, we're actually doing it. That was it just really overwhelming for all of us. I mean, even your approach to making records was like, we'd never experienced it like that. Like it was like we had done, like, yes, we'd been in the studio for the two records before, but it was never that hyper focused. We never were in a situation to where we're going to spend a couple days just making sure the bass drum sounds right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. And that was your guys' first record for Warner Brothers, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
We like the time leading up to that, we had just kind of talked to a bunch of different labels, and then we ended up going with Warner Brothers, and then we had written the majority of it. We had this kind of like this rehearsal room lockout in New York, and so we would just go in there and record and lay stuff down, like on a really like bare bones setup that we had. And that's, I mean, as you remember, just how we were demoing everything.
Sure. Yeah. So it was really just the whole experience, that it was just all happening at a whole other level than.
Yeah. And for us, just in a way that we didn't think possible. Like I just look back on that time as like a really pivotal moment, or just for us as a band, and then also just for us as people. I mean, I think each of us throughout the process had these moments of, oh my God, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're doing this.
Right. These
You
sort of
know?
like milestone moments.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking back, you know, that was one of, yeah, I mean, that was one of my favorite times making a record, because I think that was kind of the first time to like really realize like how many moving parts like were going into it, just because of how meticulous everything was.
Right.
And then that kind of like lit a little bit of a fire for me, which has only grown since, you know.
Cool. And so, how about you, Mark? Do you have a standout specific memory of that, or is it more like an overall thing, like what Adam experienced?
You know, it's weird. Like when I think back to it, there's a few things that really stand out, and it kind of gets into what Adam said with like the whole with making an album. I didn't even know that that was an approach that
Existed, yeah.
existed.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this is a whole
there's people
thing that I can't believe. This is crazy.
Yeah, that there's people crazy enough to do that.
Yeah. So I do, a couple of standout moments is me knowing when we were going to work with you that I didn't have to worry about my drums, which was nice. I always felt worried that the guy's not going to get it. And you were the first person to ever take a drum fill and make sure everything was heard.
Right, right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I never understood how people could do that before. And I remember explaining that to other people before working with you, that's what I wanted, but it never really turned out that way. So it was kind of just nice to be like, I'm good. Like, I don't even have to worry about it. This dude's got it.
Right. I'm as obsessed with drums. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. This sticks out to me, and I tell people this a lot. Like when talking about you, and when this gets brought up, the intro to the song "Liar."
Right. We've talked about this before.
Yeah. I just remember you going, almost there, one more time.
Yeah.
Okay. One more time, almost.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, what the fuck? This has to be 150 times in this intro.
Yeah.
Oh, it is a ride symbol. It's a ride symbol. What's happening?
Yeah.
And I don't think that people, I really don't think that people believe me when I say like, I can't remember how many, it was so many. I've never taken that many tracks of anything in my life. So that one, that beginning intro really stuck out to me. Yeah. And I don't think people really believe me when I tell them.
Yeah.
That,
you know, and I don't even remember the details of like why we had to have so many takes. I mean, I guess, you know,
I obviously wasn't playing it good enough. I mean,
I'm sure they probably, yeah. I mean,
now that I'm older, I realize like, it's not him. It's me. It was me.
But you never know. I mean,
I could have been to realize.
Yeah, I could have been going for something that was just unrealistic. I mean, I try very hard to try and, you know, keep the expectation within boundaries that are realistic for everybody involved, because I don't want to be asking somebody to do something that's just impossible to do. You know, no matter how incredible they are at playing their instrument, there is a certain point where it's like, that's just not fucking possible, you know? And so,
yeah.
So I probably was
not doing that build the way you were trying to hear it.
Oh, I think you're right. It was the dynamics. I think you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I just not nailing it.
Well,
now that I'm older, I could say that.
Right.
And
not
just,
like,
and
not,
what the fuck?
Yeah, not just like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
Which would be totally understandable under the circumstances. So
yeah.
Well, it came out great. So
it did.
Hopefully it was worth it.
And it is a fond memory now. You know what I mean? It's funny to think about.
Yeah. So do you guys remember like what was the beginning of the decision to even meet with me or to consider the possibility of me being involved with you guys making a record? Was there a particular person that recommended that, or was it something you guys suggested? Like, how did that start?
Well, well, for us, like once we had signed with Warner, we realized like, yo, we could go with anybody. Like this could be, so we just made this crazy list, and you were on the list just because both of like just how like sonically, just how your records would sound. Like I remember with Mark, you know, like the drum sound was just immediate. Like so that was that was one of the things that, and we just also got the sense that you were capable of that would kind of contribute to the actual songwriting part of it too, but it's more just as far as like the like instrumentation and things, which you can hear in like the Queens of the Stone Age and Third Eye Blind and things like that. And it was funny actually because we guys, you know, and like some of the guys, like they were like super LA, like real slick, like watches and rings, like a lot of rings,
Right.
and then I just remember when we went to meet with you, we went to Barefoot, and there you are, like no shoes on, shorts, hair's all tousled. You're like, there's components, audio components everywhere. Who knows what you were building at the time? And then I just remember leaving there and then just having a feeling like that's our guy, hands down, that's our guy.
That's
And,
funny.
and, and then from yeah, and then it was just, you know, trying to figure out ways to where we could make it to where you'd be our guy for that.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how that works. You know, I think it's sort of, it's one of those things that sort of works itself out, you know, because I always end up carrying myself, for better or worse, just exactly how I'm comfortable, you know. And so, and I'm just not you know, a flashy guy. That's just the way it worked out for me. You know, it's like
Dude,
at that
dude,
time I was driving like a Honda Odyssey, you know,
yeah,
minivan, and
Yeah.
and just and I wore one type of clothes. I did all of my clothes shopping at Orchard Supply Hardware. That was it. That was my fashion. So
high fashion, high
I
fashion.
just
So
I just didn't care and generally don't care, you know. And so, you know, I think there are certain people that that don't respond positively to that, and I think it's probably for, you know, works out better for everybody because it would just be uncomfortable for us to be in the same room together 14 hours a day for, you know, 5 months, and you just,
yeah, and
you
like
know.
yeah, and then just trying to get on the same level, you know, like I feel like the like making a record is like this roller coaster of emotions, and then you like spend so much time and you're so focused on it and you're putting so much of yourself into it to try to do that with someone that you just can't get on level with. It is,
Yeah.
which we experience later, it is makes for a very difficult process, you know. And then for us, just where we come from too, you know, like we're coming from the east coast, and here we are, we're walking into your facility, like you have your dog running around, and it just felt like we just immediately felt like this, or for me, you know, like it just kind of felt like, yeah, like this feels like a place I would hang out in if I wasn't making a record and was allowed inside.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, I think, like I said, it ends up working out because it's one of the things that I've just learned more and more in life. It's like the more honest you are about who you are, like the more the person on the outside matches the person on the inside, the easier everything gets, you know,
Yeah,
like everything just falls right into place because there's no
Great.
disconnect there, you know? Yeah.
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 yeah, I agree with that 100%. And it's sad that for the most part, like or like I know, like for me even, like I didn't just really realize that until like as I was getting older. I wish I would have figured that out when I was like 17, and things would have been much smoother.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that stuff just comes with time, you know. Is what was the best thing about um, either the experience making that record, or what is the thing that you think came out the best about it? Is there a best experience or best aspect of the record? Mark, why don't you jump in on this?
You know, you taught me a lot about going into how to transition into each part of a song differently,
Right.
but not making it such a show to where anyone really notices. So make sure every fill rolls in
Right.
spot on without making a hiccup or anything like that.
Right. Keep
and,
the momentum going.
Keep the momentum going. No stop, no weird stop. You know, like when drummers that don't really know, like there was just things that I didn't know how to do. How to, you could use the first hit of the fill, but you know, and then you remember, do you remember, like, I still use it to this day, and I've shown other drummers this, like, just to how to make that cymbal hit and then go into the fill. You know, I need a drum set here to show, but
right.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's
so dude, all those little things, like,
you are everything I want, 'cause you are everything
that was probably,
well,
that was worth a lot.
You know, it's an incredible treat for me to work with drummers that are as capable as you are, and you play insanely hard. And sometimes that doesn't work. It does work when it's really, really consistent, and you're a very, very consistent hard hitter. And the other thing is, like, you know, I mean, once I think everybody understands that, like, we're all here to try and make this as good as it can possibly be. And I'm not making suggestions to try and fuck you up or,
Right.
challenge you or some shit like that. We're actually just here to try and to really experiment and try and make something that's really extraordinary. And everybody has ideas of how to do that. And you were so game to try shit. And it's such a treat for me to have somebody that's very capable and totally game to try shit. And, then you get the results that we got,
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, what was the worst thing about that record making experience? What, either something that came out not at all the way you wanted it, or a part of the experience that was really, really unpleasant? What was the worst thing about working on that record?
There's at the time, maybe just the, like, not understanding why you needed 75 takes of something. And then or like kind of what Mark was saying earlier. And then I even, like, looking back on it now, I realized it's because I should have been working on, like, my abilities more, just like my instrument more. So I realize that now, but I just remember there being times like, oh my God, I can't sing this again. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I want to go home. Like, just like,
yeah, just the fatigue of.
back. Yeah. But looking back, it's just so dumb. But that was probably the only thing, and it only happened a few times to where
that
like,
truly felt unpleasant in the moment. It was actually really unpleasant.
Yeah. Because there's this thing, like, 'cause in my brain, I'd be like, we got it on the second try. Why it's 4 hours have gone by, man.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we did it that way, because then the record wouldn't be what it is. Had we not that. And then the only other thing is just that, like, being impatient. And then for me, like, I felt, and it really doesn't have much to do with the actual recording process, but I just felt really far away from like everything that was, like, familiar to me. And then so that was like, I remember kind of like that getting the best of me sometimes. But
yeah,
other than that, Eric, I gotta say, you gave us a really great experience. Thanks there, pal.
I try. It's actually really a very important part of the process, even, because I know that I'm pushing people a lot at times, and my goal is, to end up with a record that, first, the band likes, second, the label likes, third, I actually put myself third in that, because this is a service industry. I'm being hired by you guys to make something that, satisfies what you guys need. And then, in addition to that, I really want it to be a fucking great experience, like, because if it's a great experience for you guys, that means I'm also having fun. And certainly at that time, it's the only thing I did. that was my entire life, was going into that studio and doing that shit. And if I wasn't enjoying it, then my life sucked, you know. Like,
Yeah, that would be absolutely miserable.
yeah. And so it was really important for me and for everybody to have it really try and be a fun experience for everybody, you know. So
Yeah, I remember like getting done, and then of course like we go on like the whirlwind of touring and all that. But that was kind of our, like, that experience was so great for us that like from then on we were just like, how do we get back in the studio with Eric? Let's just do it again with Eric, because that was the bet. Like, we didn't see it getting better than that.
you know, well, fortunately we did ultimately, and
Yeah.
got to make another record, which was awesome, you know. And so, Mark, do you have? I mean, it seems like you may have had a similar experience with sort of the worst aspect of just being tortured with repeated playing of stuff.
You know, that kind of just took me more by surprise that it was a thing that existed.
Right.
I
right.
think more like I think that not handling LA in the best way that I should have.
Right.
Going to extremes that a young man would do.
You can,
bad decisions.
Yep, you can get into a
I made
lot of
I made
trouble.
a lot of bad decisions around that.
You can get into a lot of trouble in LA real fast.
Yes, you can, and I did.
Yeah,
I did.
yeah.
But
that can happen.
Yeah, so that was probably, you know, I probably should have reeled that in a little bit, but hey, here we are.
Yeah, well, you survived it. You survived it. Do you got? Okay, we'll go here. We'll go here. And I'd love an answer from each of you. Do you have a favorite song off of Louder Now?
You know, I love, man, there's a lot of good songs on that album. Like,
yeah, it's a great
record. I guess
record.
through the years, it's kind of, I guess, you know, more like playing it live, like Spin, man. Like Spin is a great song. I love Spin.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you know, knowing that Make Damn Sure was special, you know, like,
sure.
I felt like everybody knew that right off the bat, but I don't know. Yeah, like Spin, like maybe Spin. What's it feel like to be a ghost?
Right. Yeah, Ghost is definitely a favorite of mine. And then I apologize, I'd have to see the song titles in front of me again, and so I don't remember. But there's a song towards the end of the record that is a slower song that had these like big, epic, distorted bass and stuff on it.
I'll Let You Live.
Yeah.
What was the title?
I'll Let You Live.
Oh yeah. And here was the other problem with this record, is that a lot of the song titles changed in the final artwork, like at the very, very end. Like the entire time we were working on Make Damn Sure, it was called You're So Cool.
Yeah. There's well, because I lifted that line from True Romance, you know, that Christian Slater movie. But yeah, and then that one changed at the last minute. That's 100% my bad. I feel like I'm trying to change that stuff every record at the very last minute. Like
it's all good. It's just like, it's very difficult for me to remember the new titles because I didn't live with what the final title was for 5 months, you know.
Yeah, like had the deadline been like 2 days later, they all would have had completely different names. So that's just how
amazing.
We roll with that.
Yeah.
You know, with that song, we just did like the Tell Your Friends Louder Now tour, right? Where we were playing the full album all the way through. And I felt like, you know, we hadn't played that song in a really long time, but it felt like it was like the first time to me that people really appreciated how good it was.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's a great
song. A little while.
It's a really cool song. There's certain songs, I have these sort of like emotional memories working on particular things. Like I have an emotional connection to how things sound. And that song is emotional sonically for me. When I was mixing that song, it gives you these like spine tingly sort of, you know, sensations when I was working on that song. So it really stood out.
The drums were recorded in that echo chamber.
That's right.
Big thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. That was really fun to do.
Yeah. So what about you, Adam? Do you have a favorite song off of Louder Now?
Well, there's not. They're all record itself it was such like a life-changing thing for all of us. There was like speaking of that chamber though, there's it's not like it's divine intervention, it's like the acousticy song, but I remember you had me sitting outside of that echo chamber that you have, and then with the xylophone and whistling at the same time. And
Oh
I just
yeah.
remember dude, like I remember in my headphones when I finally whistled the notes correctly, because this, of course, that probably took me a while, and then just getting like chills and being like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. And it's such a dumb little part, it's like a xylophone and whistling. And then so like that. And then just the memory of recording that song, because you had me to the roof. So like when you're listening to it, you can hear like track dogs. And it's like, there's just something about, like, I remember sitting there with that microphone, and it was cold somehow, and then and then just singing or singing it into that, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, because who else has you go out to a rooftop middle of Hollywood, record a quiet acoustic song?
Right. I remember doing that, and I think in the moment, it just felt like, you had spent enough time staring at the walls of the vocal booth, and we just needed to change the scene, and that just seemed like a cool place to go, and I'd never done that with anybody else, and I haven't done it since, but yeah, having you just go up on the roof of the building and lay on your back and stare up into the sky and sing that song. And it was amazing. It was very effective. The way it affected your performance was really, really cool. It felt very different when you went up there and sang it.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget that, just because and even like with the song itself and kind of like the story behind it, like there was somehow like the process of recording it, and then just like the seed that was planted, those things came together in that moment, and that was really special to me.
That's cool.
Do you remember that there was a longer version of Make Damn Sure with an extended bridge?
I don't remember that.
The original, it got cut down a little bit, but the original one that we recorded was probably like 4 minutes 30 seconds, 4 minutes 40 seconds, something like that.
Right.
With almost a 5-minute song.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear that if that was a thing.
I'll have to pull it up, because I'll have to see when that edit happened. If it happened in the computer, then I might be able to just expand the files back out and hear what all that stuff was in the middle.
Can I just say real quick, because Mark brought up the bridge of Make Damn Sure, and just another like funny memory that just popped in my head was I had like the Sidekick phone at the time, had the thing that flipped up, and there was this really sad voicemail that was left on my phone, and I remember going to you like, hey, could we put this in the bridge, like really quiet in the mix? And then you were like, sure. So I just handed you my phone and like walked out, because I didn't want to keep listening to it. And then about maybe like 25 minutes later, someone came out and was like, Adam, you got to get in there, man. We can't keep just listening to this. Can you tell us exactly what you're thinking? This is just this isn't working for us. It's so like
You know what? I heard that again, because I did pull up this session recently, and it's in the Pro Tools session. It is heartbreaking to listen to. I mean,
yes.
I mean, for real. Like this poor gal is just at a level of desperation that is just, heartbreaking to hear. I'm not kidding. Like it's super real, it's super real.
No, it is, and that's why I wanted it in the song. But then I'm just thinking about like how like going about it, like, okay, here you go, see you later. Not gonna listen to it. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Well, once my brain sort of like makes that switch of like, okay, I got to figure out what frequencies this is going to fit in and blah 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 blah. Okay, I'll shape this more to the mid range and it's going to get out of the way of the guitars and blah. I'm not even paying attention to the emotion of it at all at that point. But
Yeah.
you know, so it's easy for me to listen to it on loop for a half an hour, and everybody else in the room is just like, this is pure torture. We can't listen to this girl anymore. You know.
I gotta go.
Yeah. And that's actually, I'm going to give away a secret here. There are times where it's difficult for me to be creative in the control room with an audience, you know, and a lot of times what happens is the band sort of sits, you know, lined up on the couch behind me, each with their own laptop, like fucking browsing YouTube videos, you know. But everybody's in there like watching me try and figure shit out or do whatever the fuck I'm doing. And there are times where it's like, I don't want to do this experiment with an audience. And what I'll do is I'll find the most annoying part of the song and make this really short loop of it. And so it's just like, like for a really long time, and it'll fucking clear the room right out. And I go, okay, now I can fucking do my shit.
Like,
Yo, that explains a lot. Because I remember thinking there was a few times now that I can remember. I'm like, how is this dude listening to this same part so loud over and over again in such a little tiny part? There you go.
Yep.
You wanted me the fuck out.
I was trying to clear the room.
It worked.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad we stumbled onto that little memory. So
That's funny.
well, thank you again, you guys, for doing this.
Yeah,
it's going to make this episode really, really special, just to have your guys' voices and memories and all that a part of this. And I can't wait to do this and share it with everybody. And hopefully you guys will check it out. And it's going to be awesome.
Thank you for asking us.
So I just want to say thank you again to Adam and Mark for taking the time to chat with me. It was really, really cool to catch up with them. I did have an opportunity not too long ago to visit with Adam when Grace was touring through North Carolina. He came, checked out the show, and we got to hang out a little bit. And I just love them, man. They're an amazing band and just lovely human beings. And Mark, I really miss. I love his energy a lot. I really enjoyed working with him on both the records that we did. And he's an amazing drummer and just a really cool, funny, awesome human being. So it was really, really cool to talk with him again. And some of the stuff that we talked about will reveal itself as we dig through this session. It was kind of cool talking to them. It sort of jogged my memory a little bit with what we'll be checking out. So here we go. Let's dive in. We're going to dig through every single track in here. I have a mix going on my laptop, trying to, in some ways, recreate the mix that I did on a big 60-channel Neve console that I had at the time. There's some things about the original mix. I mean, clearly this is not going to be exactly the same. The original mix has a cool kind of like gritty quality to it that I really like. There's some things about the laptop mix that I actually think are a little better, believe it or not. But it's cool to hear the comparison, and I did spend a little bit of time on this laptop mix to try and really, cast this recording in the best possible light as we're going through things. I finished it off with the little, temporary monitoring setup with the Atom speakers here and SonarWorks, monitoring on that, and I think it did pretty good. The low end feels good and came together pretty good. So we're going to start off. We'll just hear. Let's see, and also I'm going to put some headphones on so I can actually clearly hear what I'm doing. And I actually have my microphone going to my headphones so I can control the volume of my voice and not be yelling at you the whole time while we're listening to this stuff. So now here, we're going to switch to this. Dun, dun, dun. Oh my goodness, OBS is awesome. Let's start off just hearing the original mix. We'll just give that a quick listen and just kind of refresh our memory. See, remember how this song goes. All right, check it out.
You've got this new head filled up with smoke, and I got my veins all tangled close to the jukebox bars you frequent, the safest place to hide. A long night spent shaking at the thought. You are everything I want, 'cause you are everything I'm not. And we like together just now. Too close, too close. Close is close enough. We like together just now. Too close, too close. I just wanna break you down so badly. Without you over everything you said. I just wanna break you down so badly. In the worst way. My and I
Cool. So there it is. You may, for those of you that know the song, that's how it was going out to the world. That's actually the unmastered version. That's, you know, the mix exactly as I finished it coming off the Neve console. So let's hear where we're at now with the little laptop mix version. Here that is.
You've got this new head filled up with smoke, and I got my veins all tangled close to the jukebox bars you frequent, the safest place to hide. A long night spent with your most obvious weakness. You start shaking at the thought. You are everything I want, 'cause you are everything I'm not. And we like together just now. Too close, too close. Close is close enough. We like together just now. Too close, too close. I just wanna break you down so badly. Without you over everything you said. I just wanna break you down so badly. In the worst way.
So the difference that I hear, the laptop mix, the low end just sounds more muscular on this this laptop mix. It's a little bigger, and there were some interesting things. Like for some reason, in the original mix, I was always struggling getting the drum sound to speak in the right way, and we actually we overdubbed Mark just playing snare drum, so I had access to that drum in that room, and so I could just have as much room sound on the snare as I wanted, you know. And for whatever reason, now I've just gotten better at being able to bring those things out in a mix and not have issues with the cymbals taking over or whatever. And so I didn't have to use any of that overdub snare drum stuff at all when I was doing this laptop mix. And I think the drums actually the room sounds a little more explosive on them. But yeah, it was an interesting exercise trying to, you know, recreate that original mix on a laptop, and even, you know, do my best to try and beat it. So pretty cool there. So let's first, I think I always screw this up and I kind of forget to go over some of the mix bus stuff. So I'm going to kind of go through that first, just to make sure I don't space out and forget this. So this is the overall busing that's going on in this thing. And so I have all of the submix groups lined up here. And so there's percussion, bass, guitar, sound effects, two different vocals, the drums here. Yeah, so I guess it starts with drums, percussion, bass, guitar, effects, vocal 1, vocal 2. So vocal 1, vocal 2 gets collapsed down to this vocal final bus. And then all of this stuff, the drums, there's this subharmonic synthesizer thing that we'll check out, the percussion, the bass, the guitar, the effects, all of that stuff goes to this music bus, which shows up here. And when I originally pulled this thing up, I was in Topanga, and I had an Unfairchild on there. Don't have one of those with me, and so I ended up using this Cush Audio, the AR1. You know, it's a recreation of, I believe, the Abbey Road modified 436C type Altec compressor. I think that's what's going on here, but this is a beautiful emulation of a tube compressor. It feels really great, and you'll see it in a few places on here. you know, the most significant of which is on the whole mix of the music, but only the music. And so that's why I create these two separate buses. One just for the music, so I can have this compressor on there that can pump a little bit, make the music sound more aggressive. And when the vocals come in and start singing, it doesn't overwhelm the compression. Like it doesn't change how the track is being compressed, and the vocals can sort of sit on top better. There was a certain point when I discovered that, and I've just never gone back. When I did the original mix of this song, everything, band and vocals, were all going to overall mix bus compression, and I think I had to go a little lighter on it there at the time, because as soon as the vocals came in, the vocals were up front enough that the volume of the whole mix would just, you know, come down. So this has definitely been the way I've been doing it since I discovered this approach. So you can check out how much it's compressing. It's not a huge amount, you know, but 5 dB, so it's just like a couple dB of compression. And we'll turn off the vocals for a second. They're not going through this bus. So that's with it. That's without it. That's with it. I took the time to sort of match the playback volume, so you could really get a good comparison. This thing typically adds a fair amount of volume when you start compressing with it. And it really does what, you know, I love a bus compressor to do. It glues things together. The more the ambient stuff comes forward, this particular one adds a cool high frequency energy to things. The whole mix just feels more energized. It's a really, really great plugin. I've been using it all over the place. So then what happens from there, these two buses, all of the music on here and all of the vocals on here, get bussed together to what I call just mix. This is the big deal final mix thing. And so that goes here, you can see it showing up there, and then that's what I'm listening to and what we're all listening to. So there's a few things going on here. So I have a stereo widening thing, and this is a trick that I've you know, shown in some other mix videos. I like to widen the mix when the chorus comes in. You'll see it happen with the automation right here. Right there. Widen it out. It's just another trick for getting the soundscape of this song to continually get bigger and expand. You know, there's all these dynamic levels that happen. It starts really stripped down. Just guitar and vocal, a little hi-hat on the backbeats. Band comes in. Still the clean guitar on one side, a palm muted guitar on the other. In the pre-chorus, this high register lead line comes in to sort of lift some energy. The guitars actually widen out a little more in the pre-chorus, and then just to make sure in the chorus that expands even further, this is what helps. So that's with it. That's without it. There it is with it again. It's not a huge dramatic difference. It's just another little drop in the bucket that just gets the mix to just blow open when you need that huge dynamic event to happen, the chorus, make the chorus feel really special. So then this is a thing that I've been really into lately. UAD recently released an emulation of the Neve 1084 module. It's not as well known, you know, like the 1073 has always been sort of the most well known of the Class A versions. 1081s are popular because they had a 4-band EQ. I had a Neve console, an 8038 that had 32 1081s in it, and it was amazing and incredible to track on. I had it for, you know, a number of years, and then moved on to another console that had better automation and stuff like that. But my console did not have the 1084 modules, and I've used these. So these were at a studio in San Francisco called Toast. They had a Neve console that had 1084s in it, and then the sort of, fabled console from Sound City had 1084s in it as well. And these are by far my very, very favorite Neve modules. They are incredible. The selectable high frequency makes a huge, huge difference in how you can, how airy you want a high frequency boost to be. And, they did a thing of not just emulating the, preamp stage, whether it's a line input or a mic level input, not just emulating that in the EQ, but also emulating the other gain stages that you would run into in a Neve console. And it was a realization that I had more recently with my passive summing mixer thing, that I'm going to definitely do an episode about when I'm back in Topanga, so I can kind of let everybody know where I'm at with that. I did an episode about the passive summing mixer. I completely redid it, all the gain structure stuff in it. When I realized that, when people get like a Neve 1084 module and they expect it to sound like they're tracking and mixing through a Neve console, you're not even close, because there are many, many stages of the amplifiers and transformers that are in this unit. So this unit, it's got an input transformer, an output transformer. They use like Carnhill and Marinair transformers in there. Everybody's, all gaga over the sound of those things. They do sound beautiful. And these Class A amplifiers in there, I think it's a BA 183 or something that's in some of these earlier Class A modules. And so it's in this thing, and then if you have a switching module or like a busing module, those transformers and that gain stage would be in there. It's also in the summing stage, and so it's anything that you record on this is going through at least 6 transformers and 3 of these gain stages. And when I would mix on that console, so everything would get tracked through that. And then it would come back off the tape machine, go through it again. So now you're talking about 12 transformers and 6 gain stages. And then when I would mix the drums, I would do a submix of the drums. There's another round of it. So it gets insane how many transformers you're going through, when you're just using this stuff the way you normally would. And one module like this one module is a fraction of what that sound is. And so I restructured my summing mixer so I'd have all of these stages of these preamps that have a very distinct sound to them that accumulates over the stages, and made a huge difference. I love the sound of my summing mixer now. So I'll do a whole episode about that. So what I'm doing here, I'm boosting the line input 10 dB and then turning it down with the final output here, so I can drive this thing. They did a really good job of emulating the harmonic distortion character of this thing. As soon as I put this thing on, I just got a trial of it to check it out. I was like, oh wow, they did the 1084. It was, I couldn't believe it. It was just like this bizarre deja vu moment where I was like, whoa, there's that cool, like fuzzy, silky high-end thing that happens in these Neve consoles. It was really cool. And so I'm using it in a couple stages in here to try and emulate that. So it's across the entire mix, me boosting 10 dB and then turning it down at the very final stage to push these interim stages, because they emulated every stage that you would go through in a console with this plugin. And it's pretty effective. So here, check it out. There's a tiny bit of EQ. I'm just adding some mid-range in there to just make the whole thing feel a little more aggressive, but here you go. We'll go right where the band comes in. That's without it. There's with it. I'll do it this way. Without. There's with it. So you can hear the extra mid-range in there. That's pretty obvious. But there is a little bit of color, and it's kind of similar to what this compressor was doing, it's just adding this little bit of extra energy in the high end, in the mid range, that makes the whole thing feel more aggressive and energized. And so then the last thing I'm doing is this C4. This has been a popular thing for me more recently, and I'm just adding compression to the lows and low mids with this thing. And so you can hear what that does. That's with it. There it is with it. And it's cool. It makes, the mix doesn't sound overly compressed, but man, it tightens up the low end in a cool way. The low end was a little bit unwieldy where I ended up with it, and this thing was really great for just tightening it up. With all those repeated kick drum hits and stuff, it does a great job of keeping things really focused, in there. So yeah, that's on the whole thing. So that is sort of the overall mix bus stuff, music, and then the whole mix. And there isn't really much going on these individual buses. These are really more a way for me to just organize and compartmentalize things. Well, actually, the drum bus has a whole bunch of stuff on it. We'll get into that. And what is this on the bass? What's going on here? Oh, okay, yeah. A little bit of this Pultec EQP1A. So here, I'm going to solo up the bass a little bit. We'll check that out, get a little preview of what's going on with the bass. So we can check out this bus. So this is a move that I really like, where you're both boosting and cutting at the same frequency, way down at 30 hertz. And what happens when you do that with this EQ, because the curve of the cut is not the same as the curve of the boost, it creates this cool EQ move where it pushes down some of the low mid-range stuff and pushes up the more subby stuff, and it just makes the bass sound deeper. So here the distorted bass comes in. So that's with it. So that's without it. There it is with it again. We'll check it out here with the cleaner bass. That's with it. There it is without it. There it is with it again. Yeah, pretty subtle, but all the important stuff that it's doing is pretty far down there. It's way down in that sort of 40, 50 hertz range, so your speaker's got to get down there to hear it. Okay, so there's this sub thing, and this gets turned on and off. You can see the automation turning it up and down. So this is another way that I like to expand the dynamics of the overall mix. And so the chorus, because there's more instruments coming in, gets louder overall. It gets wider because of there's a lot of extreme panning, and I add that stereo widening thing, this Waves Center plugin, this guy. So that widens out in the chorus. And the other thing I like to do is to expand the frequency range. And so this sub stuff ends up coming in only on the choruses. And so you're cruising along once the band comes in and you've got the bass and the drums and everything in there, and you think you're enjoying the full band experience, and then when the chorus comes in, this extra sub frequency kicks in, and it's there to support the extra high frequencies that come in, because Mark starts just crash riding on the chorus. There's lots of high frequency energy that gets added, so I want to support that with some low energy, and the whole thing basically just expands out in the frequency spectrum. So everything is expanding in every direction when you get into that chorus. Check it out. Here it turns on. And it's this guy, this pro subharmonic thing. Still pretty subtle. It's on both the kick drum, so here is it's sending to the sub information here, and the bass guitar. And I only sent the cleaner amp and the the DI signal. We used an Avalon U5 DI for this. The subharmonic plugin just tracked that stuff better. So you can check it out with this thing on there. So that's with it. There it is without it. And I was definitely doing something like that on the original mix, and I actually think the device that I was using, which was the DBX subharmonic synthesizer, I think it actually did a little better job of it on this original mix. You can really hear it kick in here. Yeah, it's definitely on the bass guitar and the choruses there. You can hear it kick in. So we got that going on, and so now we get into the drums. So I guess we'll start with some of the mix bus stuff first, because again, I always forget to do that if I don't do it first. So here we are on the mix bus. Let's see, there's some stuff I experimented with. Yeah, that was a overall bus compression that I ended up not using. What is this? Okay, yeah, this was a harmonic thing that I ended up ditching. Okay, so here we go, adding some aggressive mid-range to the drums. So let me just solo out these drums. Let's get all these going. We'll start back here. So a little extra mid-range. This is just a couple dB at 2.5K. Here's this Waves vinyl thing. I've been enjoying this on drums. One of the things I really like for drums is to add harmonic color mostly in the high frequencies. And there's not many of these plugins that are able to really compartmentalize what they're doing to a specific frequency range. FabFilter Saturn does that. You can break it up into different sections like that. But this one, this guy right here, it's just built into how they voiced this thing to emulate vinyl. And vinyl has an extreme increase in harmonic distortion. As the frequencies go up, the harmonic distortion goes way up. And so they actually captured that really nicely on this. So that's on there. A little bit of spiff. Okay, thanks for the manual. Okay. So this is just adding some mid-range impact to things. Okay, here's that AR1 compressor, or AR1X, I guess, the Cush Audio thing, or UBK. I don't what to call his thing. And then more dynamic EQing going on, or it looks like this is static. This is like 80 hertz. This is just adding weight to the kick drum. And then this is adding some extra weight to the snare drum only when it impacts. And this looks like a similar thing here. Or no, that got bypassed. Okay, so there's nothing going on with that. It looks like I probably ended up doing it with something else. Okay, so here's more aggressive mid-range. So this is a couple dB at least of 3.5K. And then here is the cool little 1084 trick again. Same thing, plus 10 dB. And then I, turn it down on the output. And I added that same 700 hertz, except this is a more narrow thing. I pushed in the high Q setting on this, and it just made the snare drum bark a little better. So here, we'll go through and hear what each of these things do. So here's the 2.5K without that. Here's the vinyl emulator. That's pretty huge. There it is with it. Just a really cool thing that it does to the high end. It just takes away some of that thing. It puts the harmonic overtones more in balance for my ears. Where digital has this thing that I've mentioned before, where it sounds muffled and harsh at the same time. And this is one of those tricks, one of those plugins that can make it so it'll sound both brighter and less harsh. I love this thing. Okay. So then Here's Spiff bringing out some mid-range attack. That's without it. That's with it. Without it. With it. Here's this guy working pretty hard. It's hovering around like, 8 to 10 dB of compression. Yeah. That's doing a lot of work on this drum sound, man. It's really good sounding. That's a big difference. Wow. I mean, there's a huge volume difference as well, but clearly this thing is the drum sound right now. Here, I'll turn these back on so we kind of check these out individually. In fact, Spiff is going to work better when I have the full dynamics going, because this plugin is triggered by the dynamics that are going into it. And if I'm losing volume before it, it'll change how it was reacting to the drums. So. Yeah, it just puts more of the transient attack, more of the emphasis of the transient attack on the mid-range. I really like that. So the transient attack doesn't get too spitty and thin sounding. So this guy right here is just adding fatness to the snare drum. And this is just adding beef to the kick drum. So that's without it. That's with it. It's more of that like punchy, hit you in the chest kind of low end for the kick drum. There it is without it. There's probably a little too much of this actually. Yeah, I think that's probably better. Okay, so we'll check this out. The snare drum just gets a little thinner. It just didn't quite have enough weight under it. And you can see I have the frequency selection for this placed a little bit below the center of the resonance of the snare drum, and that's because I'm trying to pull the tuning of the snare drum to be lower, to sound kind of deeper and fatter. You can kind of place that boost either right in the middle or on either side of what the spectrum analyzer is showing you to sort of nudge it in one direction or the other. In this case, I just wanted the snare drum to sound kind of deeper and fatter, so I placed it at the lower end of where the snare drum is resonating. Okay, so here's more aggressive mid-range. That's without it. That's very important. There it is with it. More mid-range and a little more harmonic grit on there. There it is without this guy. And man, did they do a good job with this plugin. The Neve stuff, when it starts to break up, particularly these 80 series Neve modules, when it starts to transition into clipping and a lot of harmonic distortion, what ends up happening is things start to sound closer. They sound more immediate, and I really hear this thing doing that, which has been difficult for me to find in plugins. And check this out, how the sound all just sort of takes a step back when you turn this thing off. When you turn it on, all of a sudden it sounds like it's just coming out of the front of the speakers more. That's with it. Just sounds a little further away. Now, that was a trick that I talked to Roy Thomas Baker about. If you're not familiar with him, he was an amazing record producer, engineer from 60s, 70s, 80s, just had an incredible run. He recorded a few pretty cool bands like Queen. Amazing engineer. And so that was his thing with his drum sound, was distorting a Neve console and it allowed him to use more room mics with the drums, but still have them sound close up. And when I met him one time, we worked together a little bit, I specifically asked him, how do you get the room mics on the drums to sound like they're right in your face? And he's like, Neve, just, run everything super hot through a Neve console. And so yeah, thanks, Roy Thomas Baker. So that's all the drum mix bus stuff. So now let's go into some individual items. So at this time, I was doing stuff with, usually 3 or 4 microphones just for the kick drum. And so in this case, I have a pair of NS10s. I've talked about this before. There's this trick where you can wire up an NS10 speaker as a microphone. Most people did it where they would take the low frequency driver out of an NS10 speaker and just have it freestanding open air and use that as like a sub speaker thing. And now people have actually made a sub kick product that's based on that trick. But I never liked the speaker by itself. It was just didn't really, it was all sub information and wasn't really very punchy. And I realized at a certain point, if you leave the speaker in the NS10 enclosure, you get this really amazing punchy low end from it. And so I ended up combining the two. And so when I do this NS10 sub kick thing, I have one that's in the box still and one that's out of the box, and I blend the two together. And so that's what this track is, blended on the console and recorded onto one track. So that's just 2 NS10 speakers, one in the box, one out of the box, and it's great low end. It's a really cool punchy low end. And the way you blend the two together can determine very easily how subby you want the speaker and how punchy, how subby you want the kick and how punchy you want the kick. And you just blend between the two to get there. So then I'm doing a little gating. Didn't have to EQ this thing at all. It's really a cool trick. It's pretty just like perfect, ready to go low end for your kick drum, And so like this is the punchy part here, and then down here is the more subby part. It's down around 50 hertz. So there's an actual kick mic. This is the kick mic. This is also gated. I ended up high passing it for this laptop mix, and then just adding some Saturn like high frequency distortion to it, make it so it's not so clicky and you hear more of the kind of like explosiveness in the room. So you can check all this out. So that's the original sound. And this is most likely a Neumann 47 FET, definitely a very common choice for me. It doesn't sound like a 421 or some of the other dynamic mics that I might use, RE20. It sounds like a condenser mic, probably the 47 FET. Okay, so here's the gate. I always use look ahead on this Pro G gate, Fab Filter Pro G. And this one's, the hold is kind of short because I don't really want it to sound like these bursts. I want this to sound a little more natural, so I usually turn this down and have the release longer, so it's a much more gradual decay that's less, audible to your ear when it's closing off the gate. Okay, and so then this EQ move is specifically designed to sort of add this upper punch to the kick drum and get rid of all the subby stuff that's being covered by the NS10. And it's just one move. So there's a high pass at about 110 hertz, and then I turn the Q up. It's a Q of 4, so you actually get a boost, at that 110 hertz. And so then here's what Fab Filter Saturn is doing. It's just distorting the mid-range and high-end, and it makes it less so it's like this one pinpoint little click, and it spreads that out. It sort of splays it out with distortion. and you hear a little bit more of the aggressive ambience in there, and it's not as pokey in the eardrum. It sort of blends better with the rest of the mix and stuff. So again, that's without it. It sounds a little pinched, and that just sort of opens it up. And so the impact of the drum isn't dominated by that high click sound, you know. It's still plenty bright, but it's just a more natural sounding impact for it, for at least to my ears it is. Okay, and this is what I call the kick/snare mic. And this thing, at this time, I'm pretty sure, you know, I've done it a bunch of different ways over the years, but this was done, oh man, a lot of EQ. This looks like the EQ that I had originally done on it, because I wouldn't pull up this plugin now. And so this was probably used in the final mix. As you know, this track was fed to the console, but it was being EQ'd with a plugin on the way there. And so, so this microphone, there was a period of time I was doing with a U87 that worked really well, and later on, and I believe this was in that era, where I was using a Sony lapel mic for this, and I would just tape it to the rim, the batter side top of the rim for the kick drum, and just let it hang down, pointing down at the beater where it's hitting the drum. And this is this guy right here. This is that microphone, the Sony ECM50. So I'm pretty sure that's what this is. Yeah, it really sounds like it. It has that kind of high end to it. And then a whole lot of EQ here. This is me just trying to pretty up the high end. It was a little bit harsh in the sort of like 4K range. And just trying to get it to sound airier. Yeah, so that's without the EQ. That's with the EQ, mostly subtractive. So I'm cutting a bunch of stuff and then making up gain with the output, so it's not so quiet that I can't balance it properly. So here's all the kick stuff together. That's without the kick/snare. That's without the 47 FET. That's just the NS10s. And that's all of it together. Okay, so now, snare drum. Good old SM57. So there it is, the adorable little 57. And when I tracked this, you know, it's certainly not being put in any place that's, you know, some sort of revelation. You know, it's just pointed down, you know, right over the rim of the snare drum, you know, kind of like that. Yeah, nothing too esoteric there. And when I track it, I usually don't do anything too extreme EQ-wise, and I definitely don't compress it. I pretty much almost never compress any drum mics on the way in. I like to leave all of that for when I'm mixing. It's the one thing you really cannot undo. And I've screwed myself a couple times where I thought, I just want to make this a totally finished drum sound right out of the gate, and I won't have to do anything and just turn up the faders and be perfect. And, you know, get there and it's like, God damn it. This thing is overcompressed and there's nothing I can do about it now. I just have to enjoy the compression a great deal. So yeah, I've learned my lesson on that. And then, cool, here's some more Saturn. So we can hear what the original thing sounded like. This EQ, tucking in some low mids here and just adding a ton of mid-range just to make it sound nice and aggressive. So there's the 57 by itself. It sounds like a 57, maybe a little bit of highs added to it when it was tracked. So there it is, trying to make it bark in the mid-range a little more. More mid-range. That's a nice move there. I love this EQ plugin for boosting mid-range, man. It is just the shit for that. Okay, and so then here's FabFilter Saturn being applied in a similar way as it is on the kick drum. It just takes the high frequency of this thing and with the harmonic saturation, the distortion that's going on up there, makes it so it's not just this momentary point of high end. It just sort of glues it together and spreads it out so it can be bright and not poke you in the ear so much. And to me, it just sounds more like a snare drum, as weird as that is. But, this is an unnatural thing where it's like we have a microphone that's 1 inch from the drum and nobody listens to a snare drum that way, and you have to try and make it feel more like what it sounds like either when I'm playing it and my head's a couple feet away from the drums, or if you're standing in front of the drum kit and you're 6 to 10 or whatever feet away, this sound right here is just not really what a snare drum sounds like to me. That's more what it sounds like in the room. So then there's another guy here. So this is the 740. This is a Beyer 740. It's a condenser mic. This was a tip that was passed on to me. This wonderful guy, Stephen Jarvis, had an equipment rental company in Northern California, and he worked with a bunch of amazing engineers, people like George Massenburg. And apparently this was a mic that George Massenburg liked to use for snare drum. Maybe I might be mixing that up. Because there was another one that he was really into, but yeah, I think this was it. And so, Stephen Jarvis suggested it to me one time. I tried it, and it's great. It's just a super hi-fi thing, and it just captures a very honest version of the snare drum, and it can take the volume. But I think I haven't checked these plugins, but I'm pretty sure I'm totally destroying it with distortion. So let's see what happened with this. Yeah. So this becomes sort of the trashier sound of the two. It's gated. Bunch of mid-range. I don't know. It looks like I just kind of turned up everything. Probably wouldn't sound that different with that EQ bypass. Okay, so here's this guy. This is the 1073. So I used this before they came out with the 1084 version. I'm actually going to do a comparison of these at some point. And then more distortion here with the J37 plugin. And then this guy doing some intense compression. So we'll start to peel this stuff back. Yeah, so there's all that really thick compression. Brings out all the cool sustain and ambience every time he hits the drum. Okay, so there's without the tape emulation. That's without the Neve 1073 plugin, because I'm boosting a bunch of mid-range here as well, a bunch of 1.6K. That's really adding a nice aggressive bark to it. Okay, and then this ridiculous EQ move, where I'm just boosting everything. Let's go. And sort of taking off some of the low end. Yeah, just focusing it more in the mid-range. And there's the gate, yeah, so the original thing sounded like that. It's a cool sounding mic. It actually has a cool sort of thunk to it. So we'll turn all this stuff back on. So that's the two of those together. That's the 57 by itself. And the distortion on the 740 microphone, it just adds to the decay of the drum and brings out the room sound without having to actually use room mics. And so these are both designed to carry like the mid-range and the high end of the snare drum. And then I have a whole separate track here that's just for the low end. And it looks like I ended up using the 57 as the source for that. Sometimes I'll try the 740 or the 57, and whichever one sort of adds up the best, I'll end up doing it. So here's the low end stuff, this compartmentalized low end. So it's also gated. I have this extreme EQ going on here. So huge boost down at the fundamental of the snare drum. This is right around 190 hertz. And then a low pass filter at right around 1K with a really high Q, so it's boosting more mid-range there. And then this is a little timing offset that made the phasing of it line up properly with everything else and preserves, tries to get the most out of having these three sources being able to really sound as full and fat and solid as possible. Okay, and then a little bit of distortion on here, this SansAmp guy. This thing is cool. It has a cool low punchiness with it. This buzz knob is sort of responsible for that. So that's without the SansAmp. So a lot of that really thick low end is coming from this plugin. This we'll check out once we blend it with the other stuff. It doesn't really do anything by itself. So here's this EQ. It's without it. That's with it. And let's see, I think, yeah, I had to turn the volume down on here so because I was boosting so much, it was clipping the output of this plug-in, which theoretically doesn't really matter, if you have floating point, like a 32-bit floating bit processing in there. It shouldn't really matter if it clips the plug-in. But I don't know. I'm an old school guy, and I still pay attention to those things. Yeah, so there it is without it. The volume comes up, and you hear everything. It's distorting a little more. And this is just sort of cleaning up some of the other stuff going on in between there. And it looks like I did some editing in here to make it easier on the gate. Yeah, or actually it looks like I was repeating a particular hit for this low end. There was some weird stuff with this when I pulled this thing up again, that there was one section where the low frequency of the snare drum, like the phasing of it changed somehow for one section. So I ended up rebuilding it in here. But we can hear all this together. So you can hear how the phasing works. So that's with the 57, with the that really distorted mid-rangey 740, and now the low-endy stuff. That's without the lows. And so check this out, this guy. So it gets really thin when I flip the phase. And so I optimized the timing of this low frequency thing to do that. So this is a subtle difference, but with it delayed, it's a little bit more in phase. You lose a little bit of the heft of the low end. Here, the chorus, I think, is the best example. That's without it. That's with it. It's just lining up the low frequencies, and I just do it by ear. I just slide this number around and keep, bypassing it in and out, and just making sure that it's actually making the low, bringing out as much low frequencies as possible. Because the more these things are all pushing in the same direction and not canceling low end, the less EQ I have to do. And I'm doing these moves that are, these extreme moves as it is, trying to get all this low end punch to happen, and I don't want it to be phase canceling, screw everything up. So, so we can hear, let's hear all this stuff together. So here's, well, actually, we'll do one more. Here's the cymbals. Let's do that. So these are the overheads. This was the thing that where the phasing changed in a section of the song, and I don't, for the life of me, have no idea why that happened. We may have been doing multiple takes on this thing, for the better part of a day, and something changed or got moved or something, and when I edited it together, one section was just different than the others. And so I had to reverse the phase in the chorus to have the overhead stay in phase with the rest of the drum kit. This looks like an original EQ move. This was probably on the original mix. So I'm just taking out cloudy, sort of low mid-range stuff, 370 hertz. At one time I was experimenting with boosting the snare drum fundamental in there, and then just a broad shelf EQ pulling down more low-end stuff. Yeah, there's just low-end stuff in there that makes it feel a little murky, and I'd rather have this be more for the cymbals, and my drum sounds are coming from the close mics more, and these certainly add some air and enhance them, but the impact, is really being designed with the close mics. So here we can hear. That's without the cymbals, the overhead mics. So you can hear some bleed cutting in and out. You can tell I was sort of helping the gate along here, just muting out some regions, that was sort of triggering the gate to open. So then these microphones were, I think I rented some stuff, so I think these are C12s, proper AKG original vintage C12s that I rented from the same guy, Stephen Jarvis. I was in this era, I think I was still doing that. It was just like a practice that I had, gotten comfortable with at a certain point, and I just loved the way these mics sounded over the drum kit. They were just a great overall picture, and so anytime I had like a whole full band, album project going, I would just rent those things while we were tracking drums. So yeah, I'm pretty sure those are C12s. Okay. Okay, the floor tom. This is a cool sounding floor tom. I definitely spent some time on the tuning on this thing to really make sure that this thing was decaying right, and the right amount of dampening on it, just so it's not droning too much. It has the right amount of punch, and the right amount of decay, and so I'm just clearing out some of the cloudy low mid stuff, adding some mid range aggression. Again, this is an EQ move that was definitely on the final mix. What I added was this loveliness, good old Saturn. And so I just love what this thing does to the mid-range. You get all that aggressive sustain on the mid-range of the drum. And then you can hear, that's what the original thing sounded like. And I'm pretty sure I had two mics on this floor tom that got blended together. There was a top mic and a bottom mic. I didn't do a lot of extreme EQing when I would print this. Just made sure that they're in phase, and that that the bottom mic was adding a little extra, resonance, just more low end to the overall sound of the drum. So it's not just all like attack sound, and then this EQ is a huge part of what makes this work, And so in context, that's without it. It's cool. It's a nice deep tuning on the drum. these drums are absolutely for sure my Sonar 9-ply Beechwood drums that have all square dimensions. So all the toms are like 12 by 12, 13 by 13, 14 by 14, 16 by 16, and 18 by 18. They're all square sizes. They're amazing, really loud, powerful sounding drums. I've since then realized that square sizes are probably the worst thing to do, but the the drums that I designed with Sugar Percussion are specifically the opposite of that, but they've worked amazing for this stuff. So I used it for almost all of the Good Charlotte stuff. I used it on this Taking Back Sunday stuff. I used it for the Queens of Stone Age stuff. So that Sonar drum kit has been on a lot of the like big aggressive rock things that I've done. And this sounds like it's probably the 18-inch floor tom. That is just that's a big, hefty, low floor tom sound there. Okay, so then there's a room sound, and this is where. Yeah, so this is the main room at Barefoot. This was before I went crazy and put a wall down the middle of it, and so it's just one big open room, and a nice big recording space. And I did, on this album, I did a weird thing. I was really obsessed with trying to get as much room sound on the kick drum as possible. I don't want the kick drum to just sound like a mic, that's inside the stupid drum. It just drives me nuts. It's my least favorite kick drum sound. So I'd love to be able to have a mic that's like 6 feet away, or have mics all the way across the room, and the majority of what you hear in them is kick drum. And so what we did was we built a special baffle. It was basically a wall that was probably 12 feet across, and the drums were in the corner where the drumbrella is now. For any of you who have seen details about Barefoot recording, there's this thing called the drumbrella that you raise up and down. The drumbrella did not exist yet for this recording, so that wasn't there, but the drums were in that position, sitting right outside where the chamber is, the reverb chamber. And so there's reverb chamber stuff going on in this as well that you'll hear. So they're in that corner, and then across the face of the drums is this big faux wall that we built. And so it was wood along the bottom and then plexiglass for the upper parts, so Mark could have visual contact with everybody else that he's playing with. And all I did is I cut a 24-inch hole in one of the pieces of wood, so the kick drum would be exposed to the rest of the room. The sound of the kick drum would get out into the room, and the rest of the drum would be behind this baffle wall. And I thought that would finally balance things out in a way where I'd have tons of kick drum in the room, and it'd bring things more in balance for the cymbals and the snare drum and everything else. And it kind of worked. We did end up using it, but there was a weird thing, and not until now it was really a challenge dealing with this. So let's listen to this thing without any of the stuff on it first, so you can kind of hear what the results of that were. Having the kick drum, me attempting to isolate the kick drum in the room for the drums. So you can kind of hear it. The kick drum certainly sounds closer up. It has a more present attack to it. The snare drum sounds further away. Yeah, and the cymbals are not overwhelming at all. It really is kind of a lot of kick drum. Here was the problem, is that in this process, I learned how important the batter side sound of the kick drum is. And so when you do this, when you make a hole just for the resonant side of the kick drum to pour out into the room, you're missing the sound. You're screwing up the balance between the batter side part of the kick drum sound and the resonant side kick drum part of the kick drum sound. And so what I was getting in the room was all just the resonant side. And so then originally we had heads on both sides of the kick drum, and I wasn't getting enough of the batter side, so I decided, fuck it, I'm just going to take the resonant head off, which we did. And so it was a kick drum with just a batter head on it and no head on the other side. And so that way I would get that back. But what ended up happening is it's kind of a weird clicky sound for the kick drum. And when I ultimately EQ'd it and got a lot of that really cloudy mid-range, low mid-range out of there, it ended up too clicky. And I needed this brightness just to add air to the cymbals and all of that stuff. But, and back then, it was one of the challenges that I had mixing this song, is like I couldn't get this, you know, these room mics to be super useful because the kick drum was so clicky in them. And, you know, it was a bit of a failed experiment. But Spiff to the rescue. Look at that. I didn't have this when I mixed this record. And it just does an amazing job of tucking in just those attacks. It's just removing those really aggressive, clicky attacks on the kick drum. That's without it. That's with it. Okay, here's another timing adjustment. Me just making sure that the low end of the kick drum in the room mics is lining up the right way with the low end of the close kick mics. So we'll check that out in a second. And then this is, yeah, here it is, the UBK AR-1X guy. Again, this is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Just a beautiful, aggressive, compressed room sound. So that's what this stuff sounded like originally, just the mics by themselves. And there it is with all the plugins. So check out what happens when the compression's on there and I don't have Spiff doing its thing. It's a disaster. And now that sounds like what a kick drum should sound like in the room. And actually, I wonder if this is even better after the compressor, because the compressor is contributing to the problem, and then this would help. Yeah, a couple more sneaking through there. Yeah, not that different. So it really made this room sound finally a lot more usable. So I think that was part of why I was able to do this without using samples. So that's with the room. There it is without it. You can really hear it. And I love what the room does to the cymbals. It makes the cymbals be just like this cool ambient wash of stuff instead of this one sort of stark cymbal being hit, and glues all of that air together on the cymbal. It's a really cool thing. Okay, so then there's the chamber. So we'll check that out. And this guy turns on and off, starts to come in the pre-chorus, and then is in for the choruses, and I turn it up in the sort of explosive moments. So that's the reverb chamber. All this has is just a little bit EQ on it. So this looks like an original EQ move, so this was on the original mix. Yeah, it's just too cloudy and too thick in the mid-range. I need to save that room for other stuff, for guitars, vocals. Yeah, so it gets turned way up on that transition where he has that big blappin', blappin'. Okay, that certainly could have been done more gracefully. Let's see, let's go like this. A little hard working on this laptop. All right, bam. It should be like that. Yeah, and actually this thing, it actually cuts off too quick as well. This automation is a little out of sync with what we're doing. Yeah, it's not, it should be more. There we go. That's what it's supposed to sound like. Okay, so now we can hear all of that together. So you really hear that that chamber reverb jump out on the big fill going to the chorus. That's without the chamber. And here you can hear, we'll check out this fill without the chamber. The chamber is a huge part of the explosiveness of this. And it's just one of those things, man. There's certain things that I just cannot be emulated any other way. And just drums being played in a room and miking that room has a certain kind of explosiveness to it that there is no reverb patch or reverb device or digital reverb or plate reverb or anything on the planet that can recreate that. And you know, my reverb chamber, it was originally set up where you would have a speaker in there with microphones and you could feed stuff into the speaker. That is great for certain things, but I wanted to be able to have the sound of instruments go directly into that reverb chamber room, and so I added a door that I could open a little bit, however much I wanted, and so the drums are set up right outside that door, and I would open it just enough to let the sound pour in there, and then you get this. And it's just a sound that doesn't happen any other way. So there's still more drum mics. Look at this. Holy mackerel. I don't know why this one's all the way down here, but there's a mono room mic, and let's see what I was doing with that. So yeah, so this is out in front of the drum kit. I left this a little trashier, a little more mid-rangey. There's a little bit of gating going on, you know, only like 8 dB. This is meant to add room sound to the snare drum, is what's going on here. And I think this is getting keyed from the close mic of the snare drum. And so back here you'll see this snare key, which is going to bus 21. That shows up here to the key input, and so this mic opens only when the snare hits. So it won't get triggered by anything else. And it's just turning the stuff down in between the snare hits by whatever this is, almost 9 dB. Oh wow. This is an original EQ move. Yeah, it sounds like I had this mic sort of tucked away in a corner somewhere and then sort of opened it up with EQ. And some crazy overtones. The mic that was really popular for me to use for a mono drum room thing is a U47, Neumann U47. I have one original Neumann U47, and so that's what's going on here. And it looks like I needed to take out some specific overtones that were just being annoying. These are probably for cymbals later on. And this is sort of a droney low end thing. Yeah, you can hear the low end droning away. So let's see what happens when it goes in the chorus, and I think these are going to be important. Yeah, that ringy metallic overtone. Just taking those out with these guys. Just full tightest Q, just trying to remove just very specific frequencies that are ringing out on that crass cymbal. Okay, so let's hear this with everybody. So it's really the combination of this mono room mic and this distorted snare sound that give you all of that explosion, explosive quality to the snare drums. Check this out. And the room mic, it really makes this distorted thing just sound more real. And when I take this off, this sounds kind of fake. And with the real room on there, the aggressiveness of this blends in with the room to just make it sound like a really intense room sound. And with this thing off, you lose that cool thickness to the room explosion. Yeah, so these two really work together to make that snare drum happen. And so then I didn't have to use this snare drum overdub. And so here it is. So here it is. There, yeah, this is probably the 57 on the snare. Just a mono room thing. Yeah, so this was done after the fact when I was just having trouble getting the drums to do their thing. I ended up not needing it. But these were definitely used in this mix. Ironically, the room sound doesn't even really come across as well here. And I can switch to the instrumental of this. I like the way the room sound comes across in this new one better. Yeah, so there you go. Didn't need these at all. Goodbye. Okay. All right, so that's drums. I think we did the drum bus, we did all the individual stuff, all that stuff. I think I'm actually remembering to do everything. Okay, great. Ooh, we're not done with the drums. Okay, totally forgot about this guy. So, when I'm working on projects like this, I always make a stereo drum mix. And this one, I'm trying to remember, I think this was still being done on tape. I can't remember now. I think it was. I don't know. And it kind of sounds like it was. And so I would make a stereo drum mix that we would listen to while we're doing all the other overdubs on the song. And so when I did the stereo drum mix for this song, I put a lot of effort into this, creating this sort of drum explosion that goes into the chorus. And it was usually like grabbing either the mono room mic, maybe blending in a couple other things, but mostly that mono room mic and maybe the stereo room mics, and just sending it. Let's see, let's listen to it, because if it's mono, then it would just be the mono room mic. Yeah, it's hard to tell because that's the whole mix of everything in there. But the really explosive part of that is probably just either the mono room mics, stereo room mics, going to an 1176 and just being mashed with an 1176. This is like an old blackface original one. And then going to one of these Orban paracrossalizer EQs. It's like an 8-band parametric EQ that has, sort of sliders for the cut and boost. And that thing distorted really cool. And so it was the combination of those two things together that would create that, drum explosion effect that you hear right here. And so when I was doing, even when I did the final mix of this song, I didn't want to have to recreate that. And so I took that original drum mix, and you can see like it's the original, reference drum mix that we listened to while we were working on the song. And there it is. Whole lot of distressors on there and stuff. kind of a weird flangey reverb thing going on. I'm not sure what I was thinking. So we'll hear it go into the chorus here. And so I just kept those last 4 hits, blop-em, blop-em, going into the chorus. And even on the final mix that went on the album, I used this. And so that gets blended in with the drum mix that I have going now. That big explosive drum thing. So if I take that out, you still get the benefit of the chamber in there and all that stuff, and this just adds to the intensity of it. So there we go. Now we've done all the drums. Okay, bass. How low can you go? So there's the DI, and I'm pretty sure this is a Fender Jazz bass. Matt Rabano playing bass, great bass player. Just super solid, super consistent. And then, I have this guy. I'm doing a little phase adjustment to make sure the DI is nice and in sync with the amp. This is for a little bit of like low mid or just mid range, to get rid of some of the really clacky moments that might poke out too much. Certainly on the DI, I don't need to hear any of that from the DI. And here's me just making the DI much more all about the subby part. That's without the EQ. There it is. You really feel the sub coming off this. I mean, this is like 10 dB at 40 hertz. And this is an SVT. It's an original, probably 70s era SVT with an 810 cabinet. Probably either my U47 tube or a 47 FET on this thing for miking it. And I always put just one mic on the cabinet, and it'll be a good 2 feet away. And I like to put it right in the center of 4 of the speakers, either the upper 4 or the lower 4. I'll do the lower 4 if I want it to be more subby, and the upper 4 if you want it to be a little more punchy. And I think this was probably on the upper 4. And I'm using the DI for the sub. And so here's this phase adjustment. So if I bypass it, it doesn't sync, it doesn't line up quite right. That's without it. When I turn that thing on, you feel the punch of each finger pluck just a little bit more, because that both the amp and the DI are pushing in the same direction more at the same time. And that's a very common problem because, the DI, the signal from the DI is always unescapably going to arrive first. There's no delay, there's no microphone. The delay really comes from however far the microphone is from the speaker. And in my case, I like having the mic a little bit of ways there. And so you'll probably have a couple milliseconds delay, from the mic being a couple feet away from there. So I would always have to adjust this. I used to do it with a delay, a digital delay. I'd use a 2290, TC Electronics 2290 delay that could get tenths of a millisecond, and I could, tweeze it in so it was lined up perfectly with the amp signal. But now it's super easy. Just use one of these guys, get it all lined up. So then, so there's this, just making sure there's no clackies getting through. And then this, okay, so then on this guy, I think this was just a little bit, it's just a little too washy in this sort of punchy range here. It's a little ringy there. So I just wanted to tighten up that low end stuff a little bit. Here's a bunch of mid-range, 1K, just to make it more aggressive. Hear more of the finger sound. That's without it. And then this is catching any, aberrant clacks that stick out. And then you can hear this sub kicks in the chorus. Yeah, I could just hear that even in the headphones. Okay, and then here's another thing we did just to widen the sound of the bass a little bit. We sent it to another amp and put it through a Leslie speaker. And so the sound of the bass kind of moves around just a little bit. It's like on a slow rotation with a Leslie speaker with two mics on it, and just widens it out. So the bass guitar isn't just right, in the center of your forehead the whole time. That's without it. That's with it. Just adds a little bit of air to it. So here's this old Fairchild plugin that, it was probably on here in the original mix, so it stayed on there. And then a pretty extreme EQ on this. This looks like it was also from the original mix. So let's see what's going on with that. Yeah, just making room. Pulling out some of this mid-range. I need that space I need for guitars and other things. And then this little Fairchild guy, just evening it out a little bit. So that's the cleaner bass sound. And then in the choruses, we double-tracked this huge distorted bass. Okay, I know this sound. So this is this particular bass. It's a K, K-A-Y, and it looks like it's a small-scale version of an SG is what it looks like. And I don't know what kind of pickup is in this thing, but this bass distorts so incredible. And so this is that bass through a Soldano SLO 100 through an 810 cabinet. And it's an incredible distorted bass sound. And so it was used to like accent, that moment right there. And you wouldn't really know that it's there. It's just that moment sounds just, unless you turn it off. And so when with it, just sounds extra fat, Here, we'll just do bass and drums for a second here. Turn all the guitars off. So there it is with the extra bass, the distorted bass in there. And I mean, the distorted bass is a huge part of what makes this chorus so heavy. If you take this out and put the guitars in, sounds cool rock song. The bass is what just takes it to that, like, what is going on in the chorus? And it's kind of subtle. I don't know if everybody has really tuned into the fact that there's distorted bass that comes into the chorus. It certainly supports the guitar, and the guitars are really, sort of the dominant thing that's leading the way. But man, it just adds so much girth to the chorus, That's without it. And there it is with it. Okay, so then here's EQ going on here. And you know what? I think, are these all linked together? Yes, they are. Okay. Yeah. So that's without the EQ. Just kind of prettying it up. And doing this high pass at around 90 hertz, very steep, because I want to compartmentalize this. I wanted it to add weight more to the guitars, more so than the bass. And I like to try and keep, sub information coming from one source, because when they sort of collide and go in and out of phase, it can be, the cancellations can be extremely dramatic, where there's places where the low end just disappears entirely for a second, And so I didn't want this distorted bass to really be interacting in that way. So it's really sitting above where all the subby stuff is happening with the bass guitar. And so you can hear all that. So that's all the deep low end there. And this is that really thick, like 90 hertz and up kind of thing. Okay. So that's the bass. I don't think there's anything else particularly unique that happens there. There's one tiny, adorable little shaker that happens. Let's check that out. It's one of those fruit shakers. Looks like a little green apple. Yeah, just high passing it. It's probably just some noise down there that doesn't need to be there at all. Nothing else going on with that. Didn't need to be compressed or anything. And it just kind of keeps the momentum going when the drums stop. And just defines the time that's, that's happening in that break. So yeah, I was into that. I like the little shaker guy. Okay, so what is this? There's an extra hi-hat overdub. Oh, okay, we overdubbed this. Yeah, for some reason. Okay, so this is interesting. You can see this grayed out stuff at the beginning. Originally, this song started where the whole band just kind of came in together. Let's just experience that for a second. It started like this. Yeah, so with the vocal and everything. And somewhere along the way, and I don't even remember whose idea it was my idea or the band or somebody, we realized it's just cooler starting
You've got this new head filled up with smoke.
Like this, and I just needed a little bit of something to mark time there, similar to like the shaker later on. And
you've got this new head filled up with smoke, and I got my veins all tangled close to the juice.
It just kind of feels more like a band playing live to me. Like that's something that, the drummer would do live just to keep everybody together, and it just feels like you're more in a live moment with everybody doing that. Even though, ironically, this hi-hat was overdubbed to make it seem that way, but that's pretty cool. The song, when we tracked it, actually started a totally different way with everybody in from the beginning. I think this was a good choice. The beginning with it just vocal, the one guitar, and the little hi-hat backbeats is way more compelling to me and sets up this entrance of the band in such a cool way.
Safest place to hide. A long night spent with your most obvious weakness.
And just adds another level that just keeps building to keep you engaged in this song. It starts and pulls you in, the band comes in, and then the pre-chorus takes you to another place, and then the chorus is this whole other explosion of stuff. And so yeah, there's a little hi-hat overdub for that. So then I think we're into guitars, right? Are we into guitars? Yeah. Okay, here we go. So here's Fred. So with this, you can see I've got two mics on his amp. And so he was playing an SG. It was an SG that belonged to him. It was sort of his main guitar. And he brought a Marshall that he uses a lot. So this is his Marshall with the SG. I got 2 mics on there. There's a 57, which is, you know, what everybody knows it to be. It's just kind of a cool, bright, you know, in-your-face sound. And then I have this other thing. It's a Neumann 582. And that obviously doesn't come in until here. Okay, so that was cooler when it got more distorted and he was playing higher. This is all, you know, part of the same setup and the same pass that he's playing there. So it's really just the 57 for this. And there's a room mic that I'm panning opposite the dry mic. So it gives you more of a sense of the space that it's in. So he's like on one side of the stage and you hear the guitar sort of echoing from the other side of the room. And then there's also these stereo room mics. Let's see what these sound like. And these got a little modulation on them. So I'm taking a bunch of the low end out. And here's a very slow modulation. This is just frequency modulation. So it's bending the pitch up and down very slowly. And a little bit of delay on there. It looks like, yeah, I just delayed them 13 milliseconds to add a little more of a slap between that signal and the dry, you know, the dry 57 signal. So that's without the room. The slow movement of the pitch just makes it have a little bit of chorus to it, just adds a little richness to it. That's without the slow movement of pitch. There it is, very subtle. I didn't really want it to sound like a chorus effect. I just wanted the thing to be a little richer sounding and have a little bit of movement to it. And then with the Titan in there. Just adds more dimension to the sound. It's like you're standing in the room with him while he's playing it. So then it looks like I was going to experiment with some sort of phasing adjustment, but I ended up not doing anything. EQ, not a whole lot going on here, just high passing it, and then just adding a little bit of mid-range. I think back then I was a little shyer about leaning on this range, this frequency range, the sort of like 2K to 5K stuff, and I've gotten better at really making use of that in a way that makes things sound energetic, you know, aggressive and energetic. So there it is without it. I definitely prefer it with that little bit of extra 2.3K. So this, just a little bit of high pass going on there. This is a more extreme thing going on here, so we'll see what's going on with this. Yeah, it's just too boomy. Yeah, I want it to not cloud up all the other stuff that's going on. So there's Fred, and then in the pre-chorus, he switches it to this high part, adds a bunch of distortion. And this room stuff is still on there. It just helps widen out the sound, add more dimension to it. Yeah, and none of those settings change. I turned up these room mics for that section. That's without the room. Yeah, and then that's just the dry mic by itself. And you can see I'm progressively changing the panning of this stuff. So, like in the verses, let's see, in the intro, this 57 ends up panned 43% to the left. I guess that's a percent, I don't know. And then when the band comes in, it moves over a little more to the left because there's a palm muted guitar that comes in on the right. So it moves over, everything widens out a little bit. And then in the pre-chorus, When this mic comes in, it's even further to the left because there's a more substantial guitar that comes in on the right, so it widens out even a little more. And then when we get into the chorus, things are just hard panned left and right. So these are the chorus guitars here. So the mix is continually just getting wider and wider as you travel into the chorus. Okay, so then this guy. Yeah, so there it is with all the room stuff. And so then we get into the chorus guitars. And so this is the same setup. So I can tell, like, the thing that's labeled 57,582, that was part of the original tracking setup. So Fred was playing guitar, and both Fred and Ed were playing guitar while the drums were going down. I was trying to track them as much live as possible. They're an amazing live band. And so then when I went back and overdubbed him, we used some different amps, it looks like. So this is his JCM here, and then I doubled him with an orange amp or something. But we'll check this out and see how these compare. But so this, I believe this is all Fred on the chorus, and then there's an Ed pass as well, which is in the middle. And so Fred, there's 3 guitar passes on the chorus. Fred is hard panned out, and Ed's in the middle. So let's see what we got here. We'll hear these guys first. See if I'm doing any phase stuff. I'm doing phase stuff, so you can hear what that does. Sounds a little fuller. Let's hear that one more time. Yeah, it sounds phasier. Yeah, it's just more open sounding with the phase adjustment. Okay, and so then, what's going on here? This is just a high pass. Tiny bit of mid-range stuff going on. This is turned off, but there, yeah, 0.2 tenths of a dB here. Yeah, or 0.2 dB of 1K. That's a dramatic move. Pulling out a little bit of 200, just making room. And then this guy, my favorite little guy here, adding a couple dB of that 2.3K. So I'm sure these are, that's without it. It just makes it more aggressive. Yeah, these are linked together. All these are linked together. And so I was essentially blending these mics together and then adjusting these plugins as if I was just putting it on the blend. And these are the same, except for the little additional mid-range on this one. And there's a slightly different high-pass setting on that. Okay. Okay, so this is after we tracked the whole band together, and we went back to do guitar overdubs. This was Fred doing overdubs, and so we used his JCM as part of the layer, and then this this orange amp, and I'm really curious to hear the yeah. So that's his JCM. That sounds like a Marshall. Okay, yeah. So there's the orange. It's a little rattier, not quite as saturated, and adds a little clarity. Yeah, just a little clarity, warmth to it. There it is with it. Okay, so then, yeah, same thing, just pulling out some 200, making room for other things. And then similar thing here. Yeah, I went through that pretty quick when I did this mix. Yeah, so there's that same aggressiveness from the 2.3K. You can hear all these guys together. That's without the 2K. It's great. It just brings it forward in such a cool way. Okay, so now Here's Ed's guitar.
Long night spent with your most obvious.
Cool guitar sound. And so Ed, he's using this Ampeg Jet. And I have what's the 90s reissue of the Ampeg Jet. And I'm trying to remember the exact model of the thing, but it's like a little 15-watt amp. It's got one 12-inch speaker in it. It's the same amp, the actual exact same one that I used on the original Third Eye Blind record. So sort of a similar approach to that. Kevin Cadigan had an amazing modified JCM Marshall that he really loved to use. It sounded great. But we would always blend it with this little Ampeg Jet that just had this clarity and this musicality to it that was really cool for blending with the Marshall. So in this case, for Ed, we're using the Jet and blending it with the Orange. And the Orange it's an original OR 120. I think I'm remembering that model number correctly. You know, it's their sort of, you know, full-on, big, loud guitar head, and just going through a 412 cabinet of some sort. Probably, I mostly use vintage 30s, you know, in the 412 cabs that I had. Yeah, I have some Marshall vintage 1960 is what they're labeled as. I think that's what it says on the tag on them. But they have Celestion vintage 30s in them. And so here we can check out individual amps. Yeah, that Ampeg Jet, man, is a cool sounding amp. Yeah, same thing. I'm just adding a little bit of this same 2K. I just did that across the board on all these guitars. There's the Orange. Just a really great in-your-face sound. And so that's it, just a little extra mid-range. These sounds were pretty well put together when they got recorded. And they add up great. Yeah, the Orange is the thing that really makes it happen. So he was playing an interesting guitar. I have this, a Gibson L6, which was really designed to be a jazz guitar, and it has this rotary switch where it has these like 6 different settings for how the pickups get combined, and there's one position that's just amazing for heavy guitar. And so he played that L6 on just about everything. And the other thing that's cool about the one that I have is that it plays great. Like it's the easiest guitar in the building to play. The action is amazing on it, and you can it's effortless to play. And so Ed just loved playing that thing, and it sounded so cool. And so both of these amps, I know for sure, I was using a little Boss parametric equalizer and just boosting a ton of mid-range, right around like 1.5K, and that's how you get that cool scratchy attack for all the palm mutes and stuff. It's all that little EQ pedal going into these amps. So then when he gets into the chorus, let's see what happens here. Yeah, then it's just a more straightforward Marshall sound. For the chorus. Just a change of texture. And I had the option of using his original pass. This was the sound that was captured when he was, you know, tracking with the band, all playing live, recording the song. And just the chorus felt better with the overdub that he did. And I think I was even considering having his guitar be doubled as well. So Fred would have 2 passes and Ed would have 2 passes, and I was going to pan these out. But it ended up being better with Ed's in the middle and Fred being panned out with the big wide stereo guitar thing. So here's that transition, you know, with all of this guitar stuff coming from here, we'll start here. Fred's clean guitar. Ed comes in with this cool palm muted thing with the Jet and the Orange and that cool parametric EQ boosting the mid-range, going to the amps. And here's Fred's big transition. We switch to this M582 microphone. It's just warmer for a part like this. Turn up the room mics. And then here comes the big chorus. So now we got stereo Fred and Ed in the middle. Yeah, and there's something just more solid about the sound of the guitars in the chorus, which is having three passes and having the one in the middle to just sort of anchor everything. So yeah, I think that's part of why I ended up not having them both be doubled. It just, the whole thing just came sort of too washy sounding. So then it kind of goes through the same cycle again. Builds up in the same way. There's the big chorus, splooey again. Okay, so then we get into the bridge. There's some cool stuff going on here, I think. What is this? Okay, cool. A cool swell that Fred put down just to sort of ramp, you know, have this swell right into everything cutting off for the bridge. Okay, yeah. That definitely should have been louder. That was an oversight in this little laptop mix. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so here's the bridge guitar. And it's kind of shrunk down. Super high pass on here. This is original to the mix. And then what's this? Okay, this is me dealing with some unattractive overtones in that guitar. This is all settings from the original mix. Oh man. Yeah, it sounds like somebody's playing a glockenspiel on top of that guitar. And so that gets rid of it. Okay, and then a double comes in. And so in this spot, sort of, when the drums come in, the guitars get doubled and widen out a little bit. And so you can hear that transition. I'm going to mute the vocals for a second. So this is all one guitar track, this guy. Double comes in, guitars get richer, a little wider. And then here's Fred doing this counter melody. So this is on the same track that we use for his double in the choruses. So it's the same amps. It's his JCM blended with an orange. There's something else going on here. Okay, yeah. And then here's Ed's part in the chorus. It's really cool. And there's a lot of room mics going on with this. And because I wanted, these other guitars are like really in your face, and I wanted Ed's guitar to be this atmosphere that sort of wraps around it. And so you get this whole thing. And I can tell this has a really cool chorus pedal on it. There's this thing called, it's made by Polytone. It's called the RS modulator. Let's see if I can find this thing really quick. Yeah, so here it is. And it's supposed to simulate a Leslie, but that's the chorus pedal that's on Ed's guitar with that atmospheric part. So you can hear it right here. And it's just a beautiful, watery, chorusy sound. I love the sound of that thing. And it's a really cool part. Ed plays here. Yeah, so here's the whole thing as it builds up. Mark beating the shit out of the toms. Man, that is a satisfying moment right there. That transition. Wow, that still feels very emotional when I hear that transition. It's really cool. So then, yeah, so that's all the guitar stuff going through there. Okay, so as you heard in the conversation with the band, if you were patient enough to check that out, here is the phone message that is kind of buried in the final mix, but I'm going to solo it for you all now so we can all just cringe in the how excruciating this thing is. This is a real phone message from somebody. Okay, yeah. So there's that, and then there's an effect on there. So we're just gonna let it play. Au naturel. Here you go.
Please, please, please. Baby, please. Please. Baby, please. Please, please, please.
Yeah, it sounds like it repeats in there. Okay, yeah, but you get the idea. I don't know who that was, but they were definitely having a bad night. So I ended up sort of widening it out with this sort of detuning, delaying type trick. So 0 milliseconds on this side, 35 milliseconds on this side. One side is pitched down at 16 cents, the other side is pitched up 16 cents, and you get this. And then here's an extreme high pass EQ going on. You can hear the cell phone, the cell signal, getting induced into the microphone. Yeah, so I thinned it out so it would just kind of not interfere with some of the other cool textures that were going on. So then with this in there, and so in the original, there it is in the original mix. And so she's just floating around back there.
I'm gonna make dinner.
Yeah, so that's the thing that people were just like, we just can't be in the room anymore while this is playing over and over again. Very, very understandably. Okay, so then there's a transition back into this cool moment here. And it looks like we experimented with doing this feedback here, and it ended up not being used in the final thing. Yeah, that was a good choice. It's just so powerful with the drums and the vocals there. It didn't. I just want to break you down so badly. Yeah, I didn't want to have anything interfere with those drums and those vocals. Those things are so incredible. Ever get too far? I just want to break you down so badly. I just want to break you down so badly. And then this drum fill is cool. It's one of those accelerating drum fills, you know, into that last chorus, double chorus bit. So it starts doing 16th notes and then transitions to 16th note triplets. And that was one that Mark and I worked on a bit, just sort of conceiving it and figuring out how to, you know, make all the transitions happen. And he just played it amazing. It's such a cool moment. So then, yeah, we'll check out some of this guitars in the end. There's some cool stuff that happens here. So at that fill, and so that cool part that happens in the pre-choruses comes back, you know, and is a lift for that extra round of chorus at the end. So there it is there. And then he's playing like a lower version of it on this other guitar pass here. Yeah, so this just comes in the end. So we have 2 octaves of that, you know, that little arpeggiated part being played. Okay, and then just to make that big accent, you know, like be as eventful as possible, we did a couple passes of it. I remember really working on this moment. And so there's these guitars that come in. And then they fade out. Bunch of room mics on this. It really needed the room mics to make it sound so you could hear the volume of what's being played. And so we did a bunch of passes of that to just make sure that that thing was just huge. Because this is like, we're already full on with the chorus and it needs to go yet another level of dynamic and go even bigger than we were. And so this is an attempt to try and make that happen. And then those just fade off. And so, yeah, I didn't fade them with the actual volume here. I think in the final mix I probably did sort of sneak them out a little bit. And so then that moment on the original mix is pretty incredible. I think it may have actually been better on the original mix. I spent a little more time just finessing everything there. Yeah, it's a cool lift there. A lot of good dynamic. Okay, so that's pretty much all the band stuff. Let's check out some vocules and see what we got going on here. You know, Adam, he's records very, very well. His voice is very easy to capture. He's just got a lot of natural, really airy overtones in his voice, and so it's not that like really stark, you know, kind of mid-rangey thing. It's just a big, breathy sound that comes out of him naturally. Makes it really easy to capture him. And so, let's see what's in here. Yeah, I already cleaned up this session. So, you know, typically there'd be a number of passes. You heard from the from the conversation we had that he had to sing things a lot sometimes. So, you know, I'd have him do a bunch of passes and take notes as we were going, things that I feel like are definitely good and whatever. And once, you know, I've completely worn him out with singing a song, then I would go and comp something together. And so this is the results of that comp. There was apparently, this little AT means that there's a little bit of tuning going on I always do my auto tuning graphically, and so I only grab specific places that I want to nudge into tune a little bit. I never ever put it in automatic mode. It's just not what I do. I know people make great use of it. Not my thing. So so that's probably was committed on this track with just some auto little tuning tweaks here and there.
You've this new head filled up with smoke.
And this was like this in when I opened up this session, and so I don't remember why these ended up on different tracks. I think there was a couple of things that we wanted to fix.
You've got this new head filled.
We did, and these fixes got punched on a whole other day later on. And for whatever reason, used the same mic, same setup, same guy. It just sounded quite different when we came back to the setup. And so I had to put it on a different track to EQ it differently. Yeah, so these are original EQ settings from the original mix. This one's just a high pass, obviously. And this one I had to EQ to try and match to his original vocal pass. So that's what was going on there. And so then these two get bussed together in his main to be his main vocal channel here. And then
You've got
this is stuff that I did as part of the laptop mix.
Tangled close to the jukebox bars you frequent.
Okay, it looks like I'm managing some
A long night
frequencies poking out with soothe.
You start shaking at the thought.
Okay, and then here's this TGI compressor thing. This is great for just holding something right in your face. Just keeps it right in your face. So we can hear it without all this stuff.
You've got this new head filled up with smoke.
Yeah, so it's not enough presence, the way it was captured. This was definitely an SM7 microphone going through a Neve preamp and my 1176 blackface compressor. That was definitely the setup that I was using at that time. The mic would vary depending on who I was recording, but almost always Neve preamp, 1176 compressor. And I remember that the SM7 was great for his voice. It usually is for people that are screaming and stuff. It can just take it. So here we go.
You've got this new head filled up with smoke.
So I'm just kind of clearing out some of this cloudy stuff.
Close to the jukebox bars you frequent.
There's some place later on where this will become important. Clearly this is being automated.
Spent with your most obvious weakness, you start shaking at the thought.
Okay, so this is in the choruses, apparently.
I want, 'cause you are.
Let's see what happens
You
there.
down so badly.
So I'm just, tucking in some little harsh bits here and there that stick out when people start screaming like crazy. And then, let's see, we've got...
With smoke, and I got my veins all tangled close.
So this guy does an amazing job of just pulling it right in your face. It's got like 23% mix, limiter, the fastest setting. I'm not doing any EQing or anything else. I'm just using the compressor on this thing.
'Cause you are everything I'm not.
Okay, little extra mid-range, little extra 2K.
Just not too close, too close.
So that comes in here when he changes register. When he starts singing up high, it needed a little bit of this extra mid-range to get it to cut through.
Just not too close, too close.
And then there's a double.
We like together, just not
And all of this stuff gets bussed to this same channel.
Break you down so badly.
So this stuff is submixed.
I just want to break you down so badly.
Goes to this same channel. It all gets EQ'd and compressed together, these two tracks. And this is very common for me. So like I almost never will put a double at the exact same volume as the main track. I usually put it down like 5 or 6 dB, something like that. 6 dB is exactly half of the volume. And it's enough to just add that richness without it sounding confusing as to like, how many people are we listening to? You know?
I just wanna break you down so badly.
So I really want it mostly this
I just wanna break you down.
and just a little bit of that.
I just wanna break you down so badly.
But man, I love Adam's voice, man. Just makes my job so easy. He's just got a cool sounding voice. So then here's Fred. So he first appears, and so he has his own vocal bus. And then you can see, so the Adam vocal goes to this vocal 1 master bus up here. So there's vocal 1, so this is all of Adam's stuff. And then Fred goes to his own Fred bus, and then that goes to vocal 2, which is right here. And so this is basically all the lead vocals. This is all of the, call and response vocals or harmony vocals or any of the additional vocals, whether it's Adam singing or Fred singing or whatever, whoever's singing it. So this is for just lead vocals. This is for all the additional vocals. Okay, so then let's hear when Fred comes in here.
Everything I want, everything I'm not.
And I'm pretty sure I used a different mic for Fred. I seem to remember that his voice just worked better with a U67. So it's an original Neumann U67 for recording his stuff. Same compressor though, definitely the 1176 compressor and definitely a Neve mic preamp at the time. And so typically what I do is when you have this 2-singer thing like this, I like trying to put them in different spaces. And so Adam, being the lead singer, he's right in the middle, and I always kind of, Fred's stuff is doubled almost all the time, and so I spread those out. It's not all the way wide, but like 70 out in each direction.
You are everything I want, 'cause you are everything I'm not.
So you always have Adam to focus on in the middle. The person that's really sort of telling the story is right in the middle, and he stays there, and then the other folks will come in and add color and responses and stuff, but they never come into the middle. That's Adam's place, And so then
you are everything.
This transition here going into the pre-chorus is cool.
You are everything I'm not. And we like.
And so Fred did this cool swell with his voice into the downbeat. You can hear him doing this. That's cool. It's hard to do, to swell like that and not go sharp in pitch. It's not easy. So then...
Too close, too close. How close is close enough? We like to get...
And so you can see I have these like 4 tracks for Fred vocals, and then I also have a pair that are these demo vocals. And what happened on this record was something that I did a lot at the time with these bands, like Good Charlotte and Take Back Sunday and Lost Prophets. Like a lot of these bands, they would show up and they'd have most of the songs, started and going, but there's some writing to do. And so we would essentially record the record twice. This is part of why the records would take so long. And so during the writing process, we would just record a version of the song. And I would have just a setup that we used for the entire thing. So I wasn't really going for sounds. They would be, good enough sounds to tell if parts were going to work or not or whatever. And so there were times where there were performances or parts from the demo version that were just great, and there was no reason to redo them. Or when we tried to redo them, the original ones were just cooler and just came out better. It was just a great moment that was captured. And so we were able to sort of cherry pick with Fred's stuff. He did a whole round of singing it again when we were like making the official record. And if at any point like his demo performance of it was better, we just kept it, And so this was one of those moments. So this is the demo performance in the pre-chorus.
Too close, too close. How close is close enough? We like together, just not too close, too close. I just wanna break you down so badly. Without your bump for everything you say. I just wanna break you down so badly.
Yeah, so you can just see me sort of cherry picking between the final versions, the supposed final versions that we recorded, and the demo versions, and I just grabbed whichever moment was, was just felt the best. So, so all this vocal stuff, I did a pretty quick, treatment on this stuff. And so for Fred vocal, it's just a high pass filter, like around 250, and just a real aggressive mid-range boost, 2.3K, sort of high mid-range stuff, almost 6 dB there. And I think that is uniform across. This was a very quick sort of like, I want to just get this thing together quickly for the YouTube type choice. But it's, it's effective. And these vocals were captured in a way that didn't require, a huge amount of me fussing with. Mostly, for starters, because both of their voices record really, really well, because I don't typically do a lot of EQing when I record vocals. And so it's really just a matter of kind of getting some of the, cloudy low mids or, extra low end stuff out of the way, so they'll sit on top of all the other instrumentation, and setting some levels, and that's it. There's no additional compression going on with these. With Fred's, am I wrong about that? I'm wrong about that. Okay, so I did the same move here on his bus. So all of his vocals go through this bus. It's this same EMI TGI compressor, and then this same thing, just trying to manage just a little bit of harshness here and there, and then that's pretty much it. Yeah, so here's the whole bridge thing, and then there's a bunch of stuff that comes in the end. And there was one thing that Mark mentioned, that that originally when we tracked the song, the whole bridge section was way longer, and he's right about that. You can see if I pull out one of the drum mics, it goes way longer. There's another, whatever this is, like, 30 or 40 seconds to the song. But that edit happened early on, and so none of the other instruments ever played, none of the other overdubbed instruments ever played that full-length bridge. And so there wasn't really much for me to expand other than the drum track. So I was going to see if I could actually reveal what the original full-length bridge was, but it would just be some extra drum stuff in there. So I think what we'll do here is let's just hear this whole last bit of how all of these vocals sort of weave around each other in the end. It's really pretty cool the way it came out. Demo vocals. A little crying gal comes back in the end there. And then that end riff, I think, ends up getting played on this pass, which is the one that plays the low octave of the melody. Yeah. And you can see right here, you can hear and see that I punched right here because there was an adjustment made to the amount of gain, and it may have been as simple as Fred just turning down the volume of the guitar, or he may have turned down the gain on the amp, but you can hear that happen right here. I bring in all the room mics. And there's definitely some chorusy stuff going on there. It might have been the RS modulator. What is this? This is a 50-watt Marshall. So that was one of my Marshall heads. Didn't get used, so obviously didn't sound that cool. This is Fred's JCM. That's the orange there. And in the room, you can hear this chorusy thing that kicks in. Yeah, that's that RS modulator again. So I believe that's it. I think I got all of the buses, all the mix bus stuff, all the drum stuff, all the vocals. I think that's everything. We did it. There it is. Taking Back Sunday. Make damn sure the recording, the little laptop mixing, the whole thing. I want to say thank you again to Adam and Mark for jumping on a Zoom chat with me to share all those cool memories and experiences from the time when we were working on this record. I didn't have time to reach out to other folks, and I felt like this might just get too long if I talk to all 5 people that were involved with this record, for this episode. I think it's very likely that I'll be doing some more songs from Louder Now at some point, and I'll definitely make sure and try and catch up with the other 3 that were a part of this album, because their contributions were huge, and I want to make sure that everybody gets acknowledged, for their participation in this record. It was an amazing experience for me. I really, really enjoyed working with them. I can't say enough how much I appreciate their patience. Clearly, hearing them talk about it, it took a lot, and I'm really grateful for it, because that patience is what allows me the opportunity to really try and do something extraordinary. And if people are all staring at their watch and, getting impatient and grumbling about it, then I'll move quicker, because I want people to be happy with it, with the experience. And if they're bummed out waiting around for me, fucking around with stuff, I'll definitely cut it short, and just, do the best I can in the moment and get it done and go, okay, there we go, let's keep going. But man, they really, really let me, indulge just about everything I wanted to try, and it results in a record that, I'm extremely proud of, and just couldn't be happier that I had the opportunity to work with them. So there you go. I hope there was some fun, interesting, maybe useful stuff in there. And if it was useful for you and you want to send me a little thank you, you can certainly do that. I'll put up the little QR codes again. So if you want to do that, I'll probably actually put the account names in the description as well. So if you want to just go to PayPal and type it in, you can do that also. But if you don't know how to do the QR code thing, but there it is. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.